So I don't normally do unboxing videos, but the timing for today is pretty much perfect. Pardon me. Oh, it's early morning, and of course, you know, FedEx emails go out, and I've been waiting for this to arrive. It just so happened to be early enough in the day that I could start this video and just kind of knock it out as a little bit of just free-form practice. You can see on the wall behind me that yes, there are a lot of games on the shelf that I have behind me. This is a Kallax wall shelf, and actually up on top above me where you can't see, there's two 1x4s that act as the main toppers. It's usually where I keep most of my board game stuff. It's not unusual to see anybody who's doing videos for YouTube, especially in the role-playing game arena, to be sitting in front of a shelf full of books like this. This isn't some kind of flex. This is just how my room is set up. You actually have, this is the first time I've ever tried to shoot any footage in my house. But this is my front room. There's a large picture window here to my right. Below me is a really large table that I built to game on when people come over. It's easy to accommodate 8 players if we're playing a large board game or a card game. Can easily accommodate any number of players, really, to 10 or less if we're playing a role-playing game. And this is another role-playing game. So I do collect games, I read a lot of games, and I try to play as many as I can. I know a lot of people really poo-poo the idea of having a game, and a recent friend I reconnected with gave me a little bit of crap about having so many games, and of course the question comes up is how many of them have you played? And in truth, the games you see behind me, probably about 70% of them have been played at least once. One-shots or a couple of sessions, you know, or a special event like Halloween. I have some really easy to play horror style games like Shiver that are easy to crank out a one-shot and just play a game like that on Halloween and not really have to have a campaign or anything like that. But this game, and I should say other games like it, I collect for very specific reasons. One, it's not to be completist. If I buy a game, it's because I want the game, and I want the game to have the potential to be played. And that is the genuine intention. I don't have a huge, massive library. This is pretty big, don't get me wrong, but really when it boils down to it, there's only a few companies and a few systems which are actually on this shelf in any form of completeness. Like Free League games, I collect a lot of those, and I've played a lot of those. The One Ring, Alien, Forbidden Lands, Mutineer Zero. 2D20, you can see Fallout behind me. Other games like a scattering of stuff across the D20 spectrum. Everything from old school D&D, BECME, BX, old school essentials is actually probably the predominant one, and that's the middle area right here, which pretty much extends from end to end. I'm also a bit of a bibliophile. My ex-wife was a graphic designer, and so books have a certain appeal to me about studying them as layout and design and presentation. And so I have tools like, you know, a pica ruler where I can measure, you know, in a physical book, a hardcover or a softcover or a zine or whatever it might be, the actual dimensions and layout, what's the size of the font, you know, what size font are they using for headers, subheaders, body text, call-out text, table text, or whatever it might be. It's just an intriguing thing. After being in the hobby for so long, you kind of wind up, some of us do anyway, looking at games a little bit differently and then looking at the actual artifacts of play a little bit differently. And this game is one of them. This is the Conan game. So without further ado, let's take a literal first look for a box opening. So of course, this is big. There's a lot to it. I went pretty much all in. Pick up the front room later, right? Let's go ahead and just pull out a bunch of its parts. So we've got what appear to be battle maps, the dice, and we can see we've got several sub boxes. So let's take a moment to just get that stuff out and not yet opened. It was 27-ish pounds, I think, shipping. And yes, because of everything going on in the US, I did wind up having to shill out a little bit extra to get it shipped over here. Can't blame them for the timing. Okay, so where do we start? This box appears to be the miniature box, so we're gonna hold off on that thing for sure. So I did go all in on it. Let's look at some obligatory dice, right? Little wheel motif on the bag. Oh my God, the nuts. This is what happens when you don't have fingernails. Typical size, right? Nice. Some D8s, we've got some Wheel of Pain as the high number marker. Pretty much everything here in a standard set. See with everything, yep. There's the full set, and then some special dice. So like I said, this is a first look, not a review of anything. Let's take a moment to look at, my God, this is gonna have to give me some room here. Battle maps. Some people are not interested in games that have minis, so for some of you who may watch videos on this channel where I mostly talk about, RPG concepts, this video may not be for you. So we got a large selection of maps. Let's just kind of take a real quick look. Quality of the paper is good. It's nice and heavy. Got a ship with its decks. We can see here, nice and large. And just gonna flip these over. So we've got ship decking. Looks like we've got some interior space. Let's move this off to the side. These are pretty darn big. Yeah, these are, the heaviness of the maps are really good. Nice, good, large size. Little village going on. Possibly throne room, little cage over to the side. Looks like we got a building interior. Ooh, man, nope, there we go. So let's do building interior first. Actually, no, not an interior, kind of interior, exterior almost. Looks like we've got some crenellations of what might be a tower coming in. We've got stairwells coming up. Lots of nice spaces. I see we're using zones, of course, right? This is a zone map, not a gridded map. A lot of people don't like zones. A lot of people don't like grids. A lot of people don't like using miniatures in general. Well, that's on them. Not every game has to be played theater of mind. Not every game has to be played with minis. It is all your personal preference. Really good. There's an awful lot of maps here. So let's just kind of go through these as quickly as we can. Nice, another big map view, exterior. Again, I have to really say that the heaviness of the paper that these maps are made out of is fantastic. We'll ruin fort with a campsite, potentially. Little snowy exterior. Got just a couple more of these to just kind of flip through as a first look. The quality of the coloring, imprinting is pretty good. It's not terribly muddy. It's not overly artistic. So this one is on a quad, but we get decking, and then on the back here we have a nice tower. And the last map here, nice little cavern interior. Oh, how this should show up fairly well, hopefully. It's not glaring too much. The paper is kind of a bit glossy, not terrible. It's not matte for sure. Core rulebook and stretch goals here. What is this small box? Adventurer and King exclusive stretch goals. Okay, let's do core book first. Player reference sheet, map, encounter sheet pad, encounter character sheet pad, and the role-playing game core book. Since we just did maps, let's do map first. Overpackaging is always a problem. So here we have a nice Harborian Age map. So we get for our view here. Again, same paper quality, consistent throughout. This is not double-sided, just one single side. Looks like we've got political borders marked out. All the kingdoms. Artwork is really good. Definitely has that hand-drawn feel to it. Put that right there. And it doesn't make so much sense to go through this stuff until we take a look at the book. Oh my good, wow, plastic's a little tough. Conan, the Hyborian Age role-playing game core book. It's not terribly thick, maybe about an inch. Of course, You know, we have the obligatory bookmark, or 2 bookmarks, as just about every hardcover now seems to be at least adding as a stretch goal, right? Okay, so artwork, nice, very clear. It is moody, slightly cool in colors, but not muddy. We can kind of see what's going on here. Nice end page. So this is Monolith. The writers were Matthew John, Jason Durrell, Richard August, Chris Shepperson. The rules development was primarily done by Matthew John, and additional rules development by Chris Shep. The cover art was by Frolian Gardner. Lots of artwork, artists Brahm, Carlos Amara, Marky Cross, Polo Parente, and several others. Cartography by Glenn Seal, Francesca Bareld, and art direction by Chris Shepperson. Of course, the list of playtesters, editors, chapter of contents. Now, this may be a little bit glossy. We'll see how well we can knock that out in post. 224 pages with rules index, so on and so forth, broken up by introduction to a game of sword and sorcery, welcome to an age dreamed of, character creation rules, sorcery, game mastering, encounters, the history of the Hyborian age and the Hyborian world, and then Tales, which is more than likely going to be, you know, our introductory adventures. And then chapter 11, which is some advanced rules. This is my absolute first look, if you couldn't tell, and that's exactly what this is. This is not a review. In a sense, I make commentary on what I'm seeing here, but this goes back to why I introduced this video in the first place. As someone who, as a side hobby, likes to look at the artifacts of play, the books, the maps, anything that goes into playing role-playing games, I often like to have physical copies, and this was a project that had a lot of undertaking because it's got a lot of these physical objects in it. Here we go, introduction. Of course, nice Conan. This looks a little bit like Adrian Smith, potentially. Was Adrian Smith one of the... Yeah, Adrian Smith. Kind of hard not to recognize Adrian's style if you're familiar with him from Warhammer and Hate and his tabletop skirmish game. Probably one of my favorite Warhammer artists. Here we go, nice double plate. We're going to see a lot of the classic artwork that has probably been used in Conan over the years. Full color stuff is always nice. Let's kind of try and get a little bit more in the middle here. Here we're into character creation from the wilds, from the blood of Archon, going through the steps here. Skills, looks like we start to get into combat and contests. Range and area, probably discussing the use of zones. Modifiers and conditions, nice imagery of armor. Really basic layout or idea behind armor, light, medium, heavy, and shield. Role-playing games can get simple. Role-playing games can be as detailed and complex as you want them to. All a matter of personal preference. Ranged weapons, regular weapons, rock, tankard, branch, etc. Poison and encumbrance. That ought to really light up people's delight, right? Another game with encumbrance in it. Another rule that, another game mechanic that often sometimes people just throw out without thinking about it, in some people's opinions. Here we've got a few examples. Again, this looks like an Adrian Smith piece. The motif and theme and color and borders are nice. Nice and clear, even though we've got a very subdued palette. It's not highly saturated in color. It's not very bright, but it's not muddy. It all, even amongst various artists, the feel is still fairly cohesive here. Got some basic stat blocks. Coming in here, we've got, this is all for encounter stuff, ghosts, vampires, Scourge of Set, ghouls, jungle dragons, frost giants, winged nightmares, lesser demons, giant serpents, of course, giant spiders, of course, how can we not? In Sword and Sorcery and Conan, giant man-apes. Then we start to get chapter 8, a little bit of history here for anybody who's somehow not familiar, basically. with Conan. It's always good to have some baseline information about Conan. Kind of hard these days not to be, if you're in the role-playing game sphere, to not come into contact with Conan in some shape or form. Nice interior cut of the map. Then we get into the Hyborian Age and the world itself, lands of the Norse, Zamoria, Hyboria, Cimmeria, Southlands, the Black Kingdom, Stygia, Shem, Middle East kingdoms, Far East kingdoms, and other lands. Nice full color plate of art here. I love the job is done really well with the guttering on the art to have the 2-page spread line up really well. Kind of nice. Probably can't see that because of the glare. And of course, here we get into some of the adventures and the use of the maps. So we got Tales from the Hyborian Age. I believe I have this in my stretch goal stuff. Nice end plate. It's not heavy. It's not thick. It's 1 inch. This is, let's take, okay, let's do, like, right, okay, here's Hacklopedia. And here is just the player's handbook for 5th edition D&D. Now this is a little blown out because I have some pages stuck in the front. But you can see for a quote-unquote modern full-sized book, this isn't really that thick. So, which is nice. The common complaint we hear is, oh, page count, page count, page count, page count, page count. You know, and that's where a difference with something like Shadow Dark, because the size of the book is really going to dictate the content you can put in there, even if, right, we look at the difference in size, the layouts themselves can often force design into being more concise, being a little bit more explicit, being a little bit more direct. First impression, always love bookmarks. Yes, that's everybody's favorite. The book itself seems really well constructed. That's that. Let's take a look at character sheets and encounter pad sheets and the supplemental material for playing the game. So, character sheet, encounter sheet. Right here we've got minions and stuff up top, special rules, antagonist, nice little scratch pad layout, and utility. Nothing on the back of the encounter sheets and the Hyborian Age character sheet. Here's what we've got on the back of it. You know, and sometimes, okay, so what do we got here? We got the player reference sheet. A lot of times when you're getting a new game and it doesn't have, again with the fingernail thing here, come on. It doesn't have player aids. I know some friends of mine will make their own. I will often make them for the first couple of sessions just because they're handy, you know. First sessions don't always run very smooth, especially if only 1 or 2 people have the game. It's always good to have references. And it looks like the only thing we've got here is we got 4 sheets all showing the same thing, probably, more than likely, yes. And so, combat, of course. Why combat? Because combat is always the thing that is going to come up in most games. And it's handy to have just a reference to get started through the first couple of sessions. If you're new to role-playing games, definitely helpful to have because you want to know what your options are. If you're not really that comfortable playing a role-playing game, it's a different type of game to play. And even for seasoned people, we have a lot of ideas about how a game is played, but how is this game played? So it just gives us some very basic stuff. And the nice thing is this is encouraging. If everything here fits onto one sheet front and back, and this is essentially all we really have to think about, we obviously have something called the flex die. We have what appears to be potentially a meta currency in stamina points, maybe. A character's stamina points resets whenever their grit stat is at the start of each tale, i.e. a grit stat of 4 equals 4 stamina points. So maybe that's not a meta currency. Attack modifiers never make suppositions, right? Attack modifiers, of course, the Winds of Fate rolling a 1. We've got a rule for that. And then, how do we know initiative? Edge stat die plus edge. Actions, these are the basic actions. Anything else? Nice. The basics for attacks, the basics for damage. And that's really what a player's aid should be, enough to really help you while you're playing and getting used to the way the game plays. The Big Pack 2 Adventure and King exclusive stretch goals. Okay, looks like we've got, interesting little file. This is a role-playing game GM screen companion. Tales from the Hyborian Age Volume 2. Tales from the Hyborian Age Volume 1. Destined for recycling bin. Since these are tales, adventures, I'll open them in a second. Let's take a look at what this is. It's a little accordion file with some, looks like our end pages artwork on the front and back, so it folds out kind of nicely. What do we got here? Feels like there's something else in here. Some little maps. Set that to the side here. What do we got here? Interesting. Okay, so potentially sleeves for character folders. Gotta love a game that really pushes its artwork into usable materials. Paper quality and glue quality here. Pretty good, you know. Role-playing game, GM screen, and companion. All right, nice and wow, heavy. This is the companion booklet. Let's take a look at the screen. This is heavy duty. A nice 4-panel. Again, this looks like the end pages, which we had from our book. Let's see what we've got for the GM to look at. Now, screens, often something that, I don't know, either they can be useful, sometimes they're not that useful. Sometimes there's so much information on a screen that it's hard to read, especially when it's sitting up like this, right? And the lighting might not be so good. White background, thank you very much, white background. And a nice black and brown contrast to allow us to read easily. White and dark brown, and it doesn't look terribly dark when I'm sitting here and I'm looking at it with my overhead lights. So what do we got? Checks, Flex Die, Combat Initiative. Looks like stuff from our player's aid. Combat, continued ranged combat, attack modifiers for range, melee, ranged thrown weapons. All very simple charts. The charts that we did see in the book are replicated here, and they are, thankfully, simple. Not a whole entire page of weapons, half a page of armor, and then a bunch of other stuff that takes up. Screens need to work for the reasons for using them. So the role-playing GM screen companion. So it looks like we got an introduction here, and places and locations. Looks like we've got a D20. Looks like this is all here to help you generate charts and for locations and terrain, conflict and strife, interiors, abodes and places and iconic locations, quest ideas, plots and devices, friends and allies, NPC types, disposition. We've got antagonists and adversaries, idiosyncrasies, 1 and 2. Looks like a roll twice, maybe combined. D12 for the villain here, goal and locations. Villains are enemies. Foe, adversary, animal or beast. Cult, animal or beast, god or deity. Undead, entities, monstrosity or terror. Loot and treasures, of course. What would sword and sorcery be without some kind of treasure? Legendary artifacts. And tomes and manuscripts. Kiss of the Lotus. How to create an adventure. A basic, simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step 6, 7, 8, and 9. Explanation for walking you through using this booklet to help generate adventures. All right. While I am going to open these, I'm not going to be reading them or looking at them very closely. Just going to give them a little slit in the top real quick. That's going to make them easy to open. Ooh, lots of plastic. Okay. So let's just go through this quickly. 2 books, roughly a ½ inch thick. Looks like they also have, do they have 1 or 2? Ah! Be careful when you're opening a book, because apparently it's now a good idea to fold the bookmarks around a page. And so, of course, in my rush, I have just now torn a page. So, Tales of the Highborn Age, Volume 1. Let's see what we get. Storm under Tantara, Tarantia, Streets Run Mad, Terror from the Earth, Run to the Hills, Lost Aeons, Kingdom Come, Skull of the Sildar Big. Looks like we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 adventures done in here, or tales. We're just going to do a quick flip through so you can kind of get an idea here. Plenty of use of artwork. And fucking don't fold them around the pages, just fold them into the front. You know, how hard would it have been just to have done that? So I'm going to be very careful about this one so I don't make the same mistake. So, Volume 2, end pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 tales in here. So plenty of content to futz around with, to plunder. Again, plenty of artwork, nice spacing, good fonts, good coloring, all thematically driven. Nicely done and set up. And there we go, end pages again. See, look, how hard is it just to do something like that? All right, let's take a look. This is a pretty sizable box. I am hoping that, like games such as Massive Darkness, and now with me playing Gloomhaven, that the miniatures are of good quality. It's often that you find that board game minis, they can be really bad, they can be really good, that would add to the cost of the production, but most of them kind of fall in between where they're, you know, they're just something that's useful. So we should have, oh, wow, okay. Apparently we've got boxes in boxes, or good thing I'm a bachelor. So it is just a box of miniatures. Let's do a real quick plastic unwrap. Nice full artwork all on the other side. Conan the King. We've got heroes. We've got antagonists, we've got minions, and we've got some scenery. So let's take a look. A box in a box with boxes inside the box. So box A, oh my gosh. So box A and box B. Let's take a look at box A. Nothing on the back to tell us what it is. Whew, man. It is a lot of minis. This reminds me of trying to get through and paint my Zombicide collection. So let's pick out something that's fairly low detail. So here we've got a tentacle, and let me see about using, don't know how well this is going to work, but we may have to zoom in a little bit. So not too bad. There's some good texture on the back. Definitely don't want to over-prime something like this. This one in particular looks really good because sometimes you get to a certain age where it's like, I'm the last in my family to have to use glasses. So let's use something a little bit more high-powered here to take a look at the minis. Molding is really good. On this tentacle, I barely, well, kind of right there. I don't know if you can see that right in the back where there's a little bit of a line. That could be from the actual, I don't know if it was put into the mold like this. We'll see what we can get from zooming in and taking a look. All the little greebles and details on the figure are not washed out, not terrible. Again, definitely something you don't want to over prime and lose all that. And again, just kind of looking at these, okay, a common thing, already we looked at two, a common thing I'm seeing is a gate hole, which is not a terrible issue because the damnable mold lines are pretty invisible. All right, that was box A. Now, if I recall, it said there were some terrain elements, so this one probably has big minis and some terrain in it. So because we've got different colored plastic, I would say that some of this is probably to help indicate, if you don't paint them, heroes and player characters from NPCs, monsters, and whatnot. That makes a lot of sense, right? So it looks like we've got what is possibly some type of, I don't know, kraken creature. Big hideous maw. Now this is a two-part. We can see that from inside and underneath. This is a two-part. And just looking over the split, it's pretty well done. So the big thing about a lot of these multi-part models is that sometimes you can see a little bit of mold line underneath on that guy, a little bit more prominent mold line on top here, but nothing like severe flashing. And a little bit of gap filling there to kind of smooth the bottom jaw in. Not terrible at all. Like a multi-part, so the legs looks like they were put on later. The abdomen and thorax of the spider look really good. The detail is really good. Of course, we got little, got to say where the company's from. Let's take a look at a giant ape. Good, decent detail on fur. Mold line's not terrible, you know, but it's actually, let's do a little bit of the terrain stuff. You know, sometimes the scale on stuff like what we have here is off, and these definitely feel like they fit. The size of the table, this stone carved table looks really good, very easy to take care of that. It's nice that they don't have bases. These sarcophagi and coffins and tombs look in good scale with the miniatures. That is really that, you know? Just a quick first look and an unboxing, not a video typically put up, but I was a little excited to finally, because I'd seen the postings on the Kickstarter going out. Of course, a lot of people in the UK and Europe were already getting it. Delays with everything going on here in the States kind of slowed that down. Nothing that really can be done about it by me, rather than not, you know, having backed this, what, a year or however long ago, who would have anticipated that this was going to be a problem? Overall, the game looks fantastic. For a game that does use miniatures or incorporates them, there's everything here to play. Of course, being a role-playing game, that's easy to overcome for some people. Not everybody likes miniatures. Some people get overly distracted by them, and that's okay. Some people love them and are able to use them as a tool for their engagement with the game. Minis and maps and this stuff that goes on the table, kind of part of what I've been talking about in the meta discussion video. This is just a meta tool. If you're not overly fixated on the fact that you're looking at a miniatures and map on the table and see it for what it is, it's giving you information visually that you otherwise might not have to ask about. You can see how far away something is, and you can imagine the space a little bit easy. Now, some people don't like maps because they're not that utilitarian unless you're just talking about a grass mat, a sand mat, a mat that just has cobblestones on it. You know, maps that just don't have a lot of detail. There's loads of companies in the RPG field now specifically that just crank out map after map after map. And who wouldn't? Love them, hate them, dislike them, use them, don't use them. It's entirely up to each individual group, and how you deal with the use is up to each individual. I'm glad I invested in getting this version of Conan, the Hyborian Age, for my collection. I do look forward to diving in and reading through the rules and looking at how it constructs the game itself. Another reason why I have a collection of games. Every game represents a different approach. Every game represents a different design philosophy, a take on initiative, a take on whether to use to hit rolls or not, the way that we interact with each other, the way that we interact with the game itself, whether it does have physical components or, as we are wont to say, be more theater of the mind. How you play is just as important as why you play. So if you've watched all the way to the end, thanks for sticking around. Like I said, not my typical video, not something I usually put up on the channel, but I really did want to take a look at it, and the timing was perfect. So get out there and play some games and just try to have some fun.